In the cold blackness beyond Sol, the crew of the exploration vessel Aetheris drifted silently, their eyes tracing the faint shimmer of distant stars. Earth had sent them as emissaries of curiosity and caution, tasked with mapping a region of space that seemed to pulse with unnatural signals. None of them spoke much, the tension was palpable. The signal had been erratic, almost intelligent, like something, or someone, was aware of their presence. Lieutenant Mara Voss stared at the readings on the holoc screen, her fingers tracing the jagged lines of fluctuating energy. "They're getting closer," whispered Dr. Kyle Moran, the ship's xenobiologist, though he had no way of knowing if it was a living intelligence or a natural anomaly. The others exchanged uneasy glances. Something about the readings made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. The first encounter happened before dawn, or at least what passed for dawn on the cold, artificial world of the Aetheris. A rippling wave of light tore across the void, and before anyone could react, a vessel emerged from the glow. It was unlike any human creation, sleek, organic, almost like liquid steel in motion, twisting in impossible curves, pulsating with energy that seemed alive. The ship did not communicate, at least not in ways they could understand. And yet, Mara felt a chilling certainty they were being observed. Over the next few weeks, the Aetheris tracked the alien presence, carefully documenting every movement. Earth's counsel had been clear: make contact if possible, avoid provocation. But every probe sent towards the alien vessel vanished without a trace. Crew members began to whisper that the beings weren't just observing. They were studying them, testing them. And then the attacks began. At first, they were subtle. Systems glitches, brief malfunctions, small electromagnetic pulses that left no trace but caused unease. Then entire sections of the ship went dark simultaneously, shadows moving across corridors that should have been empty. The crew, trained as they were, began to feel fear, the kind that twists inside the chest and lodges in the gut. And yet, human ingenuity thrived under pressure. When the aliens finally communicated, it was not with words or symbols, but with action. Mara watched in awe as the alien vessel created a small, controlled anomaly in space itself, bending light and matter. It was a demonstration, a warning, and perhaps a test. They were intelligent, far beyond what humans had encountered, yet strangely curious. Mara felt an exhilaration she could not explain. Humanity had always survived by turning fear into invention, and she sensed this would be no different. In a hidden corner of the ship, Kale theorized that these beings weren't conquering, they were assessing. "They want to know what makes us us," he said almost reverently. "And I think, Mara, that's the first time they've ever been curious about another species without immediate intent to consume or destroy." Mara's mind raced. Could humans, fragile and limited in number, really hope to survive such an encounter? And yet, she felt the stubborn pulse of hope that had defined every generation before her. If the aliens were testing them, humanity would answer, not with fear but with courage. Weeks turned into months, and the presence of the alien vessels became a constant shadow in humanity's mapped space. The Aetheris had returned to Earth's orbit for resupply, but the crew knew the test was far from over. Humanity was being watched, measured, and, in a way, challenged. The Council held emergency sessions, debating strategies that balanced diplomacy with survival. But Mara and her team knew there was only one thing that would earn the respect of beings who could warp matter with ease: action. It began with the construction of Project Prometheus, a network of autonomous drones capable of mimicking alien energy patterns. Engineers and xenobiologists worked together to design machines that could not only survive alien interference but anticipate it. Mara stood in the lab watching a drone levitate midair, stabilized by a field of pulsing energy. "If they're testing our creativity, this is our answer," she said, determination etched in every line of her face. The first deployment was tense. The drones were sent into the asteroid belt where the aliens had first been detected. At first, nothing happened. Then the drones began to emit subtle signals that mirrored the aliens' own patterns. Lights flickered across the alien ships, and for a moment the void seemed to pause, as if the aliens were puzzled. They had never expected humans to respond in kind so quickly, to adapt so creatively. And then the alien vessels changed tactics. Beams of energy tore through the asteroid belt, shattering rock and metal alike. But the drones had done more than mirror, they had predicted. Each drone moved with pre-programmed anticipation, weaving through attacks, drawing the aliens into a precise pattern. It was a trap, not to destroy, but to communicate that humanity could think several moves ahead. Back on the Aetheris, the crew watched in awe as the alien ships paused, hovering in formations that resembled a questioning gesture, almost like a nod of recognition. It was the first acknowledgement humans had received, a silent admission that their ingenuity was not invisible. For the first time, fear and wonder intermingled. Humanity was fragile, yes, but clever, adaptable. Dangerous in ways even the aliens hadn't anticipated. In the months that followed, humans continued to push boundaries. Mara led expeditions into deep space using a combination of stealth strategy and technology that leveraged the unpredictable nature of human thought. Cal theorized that while the aliens were incredibly advanced, their intelligence was structured, almost rigid, bound by rules of physics and perception that humans instinctively challenged. Every daring maneuver, every creative strategy was a message humanity would not simply be cataloged or dismissed. And then came the turning point. During a reconnaissance mission near a drifting nebula, a single human shuttle faced an overwhelming alien force. The crew was outnumbered, outgunned, and almost certainly doomed. But Mara had prepared them not for surrender. Using the shuttle's limited systems, they created a cascading feedback loop of light and energy that confused the alien sensors. What should have been annihilation turned into escape. And more than escape, it was proof. Humans could survive, adapt, and outthink. Mara's message to Earth was simple, but it carried the weight of every human instinct that had kept them alive for millennia. They are strong, but we are unpredictable, and that is our greatest strength. Recognition came not through words but through subtle gestures that Mara and her team gradually learned to interpret. The alien ships no longer shadowed human vessels with hostility. Instead, they seemed to study from a distance, occasionally matching maneuvers as if engaging in a silent dialogue. Humanity was no longer merely observed, they were acknowledged. Earth, inspired by the reports from the Aetheris, began mobilizing a fleet unlike any before. Ships were redesigned with agility in mind, incorporating unpredictable energy fields and adaptive shields. Humanity's engineers leaned into creativity over brute force, finding solutions the aliens couldn't predict because human thinking refused to be formulaic. Every prototype carried a message: humans were not passive prey. They were problem solvers, innovators, survivors. During a joint exercise in orbit around a gas giant, the first true communication occurred. A human reconnaissance ship entered a pulsating energy field, expecting it to be a trap. Instead, the field split, creating a corridor of safe passage. Mara felt a thrill she couldn't explain. The aliens were testing not just survival but trust, and humans were beginning to meet them halfway. It was Kale who first suggested the audacious idea of an alliance, not out of weakness but strategy. There existed a faction among the aliens, isolated from the more aggressive vessels, that seemed intrigued by humanity's resilience. Their movements were subtle, almost imperceptible, but persistent. They're curious about our creativity, Kale explained to the council. They see something in us they haven't seen before. We can either ignore it or we can engage. Mara volunteered immediately. She understood the risk. If the aliens were deceitful, the consequences would be catastrophic. But humanity had always thrived in the face of danger, and if these beings valued intelligence and ingenuity, then perhaps there was a path forward that did not involve annihilation. The mission was simple in description but impossible in execution: reach the isolated alien faction, prove humanity's ingenuity, and forge a tentative alliance. The journey through uncharted space was harrowing. Mara's ship maneuvered through nebulae that bent sensors and through gravitational anomalies that threatened to crush hulls with unseen pressure. Every obstacle was met with human adaptability. Shields were recalibrated on the fly, engines modulated in impossible sequences, and every decision hinged on quick thinking and intuition rather than brute calculation. By the time they reached the alien faction, the crew had already demonstrated what humanity did best: thinking when others froze, surviving when others would have perished. The aliens, in response, offered a challenge. They created a simulation that tested not just strategy but creativity and ethics. Human lives were placed in hypothetical peril, and each decision echoed across the holographic void. Mara's team excelled, not because they were faster, or stronger, or smarter in a calculable sense, but because they considered nuance, empathy, and unpredictability. The simulation ended, and for the first time, Mara sensed admiration from beings whose minds operated on a scale incomprehensible to humans. By the time they returned to Earth, the Aetheris crew carried not only reports of alien intelligence but the seed of an unprecedented alliance. Humanity was no longer just a fledgling species in the cosmos. They were a species capable of commanding respect from forces that dwarfed their comprehension. And yet Mara knew the road ahead was treacherous. Every success drew the attention of the more aggressive alien factions, the ones who saw human adaptability as a threat to be extinguished rather than a marvel to be acknowledged. The universe was about to realize that humans were no longer naive observers, they were active participants. And in that realization lay both hope and danger. The alliance was tenuous, fragile, yet full of promise. Mara and Kale worked closely with the isolated alien faction, exchanging knowledge, tactics, and strategies. Humans introduced concepts the aliens had never considered: improvisation under uncertainty, ethical dilemmas as tools for decision-making, and the unpredictable leaps of creativity that defined human history. In return, the aliens shared technologies that bent gravity, manipulated energy, and rendered conventional weapons obsolete. With this newfound knowledge, humanity prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The aggressive alien factions, having observed the alliance, now regarded humans as a threat to be neutralized. Their fleet moved like shadows across the void, silent and deadly, capable of annihilation on a scale that dwarfed anything Earth had ever imagined. Yet Mara refused to yield. Humanity had survived impossible odds before. They would survive again. The first engagement occurred near a binary star system, its twin suns casting harsh, blinding light across the battlefield. Human ships, equipped with alien-inspired adaptive shields and unpredictable energy fields, wove through enemy lines with precision and daring. Mara commanded from the bridge of the Aetheris, heart-pounding but mind clear. Every maneuver was a gamble, every decision a test of instinct and creativity. It was not brute force that won battles, but ingenuity. Human pilots used gravitational currents from the binary stars to create illusions, masking their movements and confusing alien sensors. Drones, modeled after Project Prometheus but enhanced with alien energy modulation, disrupted enemy formations, turning superior numbers into chaos. The aliens, used to predictable logic, struggled against humans who thought in leaps and tangents, embracing unpredictability as a weapon. Victory, however, came at a cost. Ships were lost, crews were scarred, and the void itself seemed to tremble under the scale of the conflict. Mara watched as friends and allies, both human and alien, fell, and yet she felt an unshakable resolve. Humanity was proving itself, not just as survivors, but as a force capable of shaping outcomes on a cosmic scale. Amidst the chaos, Kale discovered a pattern in the enemy's tactics, a vulnerability buried deep in their hive-like coordination. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to turn the tide if exploited. Mara and her team devised a plan audacious in its simplicity. Humans would lead the aliens into a narrow corridor of space shaped by gravitational anomalies, where their numerical advantage would become a liability. The execution was flawless. The hostile fleet, confident and relentless, advanced into the trap. Human ships darted like sparks through the narrow corridor, forcing the enemy to compress into tighter formations. The adaptive shields and energy disruptions amplified every error, every hesitation. By the end, the alien fleet was fractured, confused, and forced to retreat. Humanity had won not by sheer power but by imagination, courage, yet victory was bittersweet. Mara understood that this was only a single battle in a war whose scale dwarfed human comprehension. The universe was vast, and many more forces, many more civilizations, would test humanity's resolve. But for the first time she felt something profound. The galaxy knew that humans were not mere prey. They were formidable, unpredictable, and above all alive with a force that could not be measured or contained. As the Aetheris drifted silently in the aftermath, Mara gazed out at the stars. The humans and their alien allies had survived, but the universe was watching, waiting, and Mara knew that the next chapter would demand even greater courage, ingenuity, and resilience. Humanity had proven itself once, and they would prove it again. The weeks after the binary star engagement were tense but transformative. Humanity's reputation had spread across star systems, whispered among alien civilizations as a species that defied expectation. Mara and her crew continued to travel between worlds, strengthening the alliance with their alien partners, sharing strategies, and preparing for the inevitable retaliation from the aggressive factions still lurking in the void. Then came the ultimate challenge. An armada unlike anything humanity had ever faced descended upon a strategically vital sector near the galactic core. The aggressive aliens had learned, adapted, and now brought overwhelming force. Billions of tons of living metal and energy moving with purpose, ready to crush the humans who had dared defy them. Mara felt a chill that she had not felt in months. Fear was there, but it no longer paralyzed her. It sharpened her mind, focused her resolve. The battle began in silence. Human ships, supported by the alien allies, moved with precision and unpredictability, a chaotic ballad of tactics designed to exploit the enemy's rigidity. Mara's voice cut through the calm, steady and calm, directing maneuvers that no one could have predicted from a textbook or simulation. Drones darted, ships wove through gravitational currents, and energy fields shifted dynamically, creating illusions and diversions that confounded the enemy. It was not brute strength that carried the day. It was humanity's unrelenting creativity. Where the aliens expected predictable logic, they found improvisation. Where they sought to intimidate, they found cunning. Humans leveraged every weakness, every hesitation, and most importantly, every opportunity to innovate in the moment. Kale and the scientist had devised one final gambit, a resonance pulse that could destabilize the living metal ships without harming their alien allies. Mara deployed it with perfect timing, her hands flying across controls, coordinating with the Allied fleet. The pulse rippled through the armada, fracturing formations and throwing the alien commanders into disarray. What had seemed inevitable annihilation became a stunning reversal. By the battle's end, the aggressive alien forces were defeated. Not destroyed, but humbled, forced into retreat. Humanity had not only survived, they had prevailed, proving that intelligence, creativity, and courage were weapons as formidable as any fleet or weapon. Across the galaxy, civilizations took note. Humans were no longer a fledgling species, they were an unpredictable force, a spark of ingenuity that even the universe could not ignore. Mara watched the stars from the bridge of the Aetheris, exhaustion heavy in her body but exhilaration flooding her mind. Humanity had faced an enemy that could have wiped them out in moments, and yet they had endured, not through strength alone, but through the essence of what made them human. Kale approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "They understand us now," he said quietly, "and I think they respect us." Mara nodded. "Not just respect," she replied. "They fear what we can do. And that fear, that recognition, is ours to wield wisely." The alliance with the curious alien faction endured, a bridge between species built not on dominance but on mutual acknowledgement. Humans continued to explore, innovate, and adapt, carrying the lesson across the stars: survival was not enough. To thrive, they needed courage, ingenuity, and the unyielding will to define their own destiny. And in that unyielding will, the universe learned something profound. Humans were not just participants in the cosmic story, they were authors of it, unpredictable, resilient, and extraordinary. The stars stretched endlessly before them, each one a promise, a challenge, and a reminder. Humanity had been tested, and in the crucible of alien scrutiny and overwhelming odds, they had emerged stronger, wiser, and unbroken. The galaxy would remember.